Thank you very much. So we came from Sacramento, but you came from Norway. It's a little farther.
And Sweden.
And Sweden. I'm sorry. Yeah.
I know.
So thank you for the introduction. I'm Scott Sandwich. This is Robert Horton. So Robert and I have been working together for more than a year, putting together workshops and different programs. And as you see from the title, most of what we do is working with startups. So we've worked with the Lean Startup Group in San Francisco. We've traveled a bit to some places like Seattle and Los Angeles and some other places as well. So as we were talking to Ann and Elsa about the program for today, we understand, and thank you for the surveys, that some of you are selling to companies, some of you are selling to individuals, B2C. Some of you already have some customers, as I understand, some of you are very early stage. And so what you'll find is that we think everything that we've covered here will be useful for you, regardless of whether you're B2B or B2C or have a customer or you don't have a customer. There's a lot of information that we could spend days or weeks or years learning how to do sales. And so what we really focused on when Robert and I were thinking through what to cover was to give you really actionable intelligence, things that you can use tomorrow, today, if you want to use them today, even this afternoon, and next week, and over the next couple of weeks while you're here, because your time here is so short and so intense. We want to make sure that instead of trying to teach you everything and you learn nothing, it's better to learn a little bit and make sure that you're able to progress your business and learn what you need to do in order to be successful. So, does that make sense? Pretty good. Good. So, can everyone see? Is this okay? Bright enough?
Yeah.
No problems? So, your goal, and I say your goal, it's not my goal, it's your goal, ultimately as a startup, is to develop a predictable, testable, saleable sales model. And it's one that you can manage. And why do I say that it's one that you can manage?
Because you can't really copy what big businesses do for sales channel because it's way too much work for you to handle.
Yeah, and certainly what works for IBM as a huge company is not going to work for you as a startup. That's a really good reason. What's another reason why it's got to be a framework that you personally can manage?
What goal would be dependent on either your investor or your board or your tech team, for that matter. These have to go with the growth we want.
Yeah, certainly I think a lot of us, when we start companies, we use our network, we try to use an investor, we try to use advisors to help introductions. We're still the ones that have to do the selling. We're still the ones, no investor is going to walk up to you, give you an introduction, and then the next day you have a contract. All it is an introduction. An introduction is not a referral, even a lot of times. All you're getting is that one-on-one time. So it's important that you know how to actually proceed the sale. And so the third reason that we say it's got to be a model that you can manage is because what we've seen a lot of times, especially international companies, they'll come here and they'll rush to hire a VP of sales. And they say, I've got to have a VP of sales, I've got to have somebody who understands how to sell into this market. And the challenge is whether you're an international company or you're an engineer from Stanford, you're the one that knows your product the best. You're the one that knows why you started the company and you identified the need. And if you personally are not able to make that connection between your idea and the customer, then it's impossible for somebody that's a VP of sales, somebody who's a professional salesperson like me. If you as a founding of the company can't tell me why somebody bought your first product, how you got your first customer, why your second customer bought, then it's going to be really, really, really hard for me as a VP of sales to translate that information. So when you're thinking about your sales process, you should think about it as if imagine you were only ever going to be the only salesperson in your company. Because if you can internalize that process, when you bring new people on board to do your selling for you, then it's much, much easier. It's no different than if you were to hire an engineer and you said to an engineer, I've got this great product idea, go code it for me. How would that look? You've got the vision in your mind of how you think, what the need is, what the product should be. If you handed off that assignment and said to an engineer, I heard you're the best engineer at Stanford, I heard you're the best engineer at LinkedIn or Google, I'm going to pay you $1 million to build a product for me. There's no way that engineer is going to be able to build exactly what you have in your mind. So you need to think about that from a sales process perspective as well. It's a process. It's one that you have to internalize, and only until you've internalized it and developed it and scaled it, then can you hand it off to other people that you trust. So that's actually one of the biggest lessons of anything. If you get nothing else out of the next 3 hours, if you learn that, then I'll be happy. So now we can eat more donuts. So the number one. Why the number one? What are you thinking about when you're selling your product? You're building towards a sales process. Why is the number one so important? By the way, I make sure that you guys do a lot of talking here, so because I'm not that interesting. You're far more interesting to you than I am to you.
But like when I did B2C sales, number one was sort of the opening line, and it sort of dictates if they're interested at all, and sort of allow you to talk more about it.
Yeah. So in the B2C world, you basically get that one chance, oftentimes, to make that impression. Sure.
I guess one was the first kind of sale is a milestone when you reach your first something.
Yeah, getting your first customer. So another trap that a lot of people fall into is, I've got this company and I've got to get to $1 million in revenue. I've got to get to $10 million. I've got to be $1 billion company. It's great to have those goals. You have to have those goals, otherwise you can't have that vision as an entrepreneur. If you get lost in all of that and forget about getting the first customer, the first person to sign up, the first person to write you a check for your enterprise software, for your hardware product, if you don't get past that first one, you don't get to 2 and 3 and 10 and 20 and 100 customers. So when you're thinking about what we're learning today, think about, if you can, when we're doing these exercises, imagine having one target customer in your mind. So if you're selling a healthcare application, imagine a specific hospital that you know about, or a healthcare system. If you're selling a software, enterprise security software system, think about the one company that you think could benefit from this kind of opportunity. Because if you can define the message and be really, really clear to that one person, then that's going to allow you to actually get something out of the day, as opposed to trying to get 100 sales. Because nobody can get 100 sales at once. You can only get one at a time. So. And the other way I want to start this is to tell you a secret. You guys like secrets? And the secret has to do with cows. This is actually a cow in Norway.
Yeah.
Mm.
It is.
So we're going to do a quick little exercise. I want everybody to stand up and just congregate up here in the front of the room. Okay, so everyone, when you came into the door today, you chose a spot to sit, right? So I'm going to give you the chance right now, if you'd like to change where you're sitting. So you don't have to, just give me the opportunity to, or you can just sit right back where you want. But you only have like 3 seconds. You have to do this really quickly. So you have to choose whether or not you want to make a change or just sit where you are. Go. Quickly, come on. How many people changed where you were? How many people wanted to change but didn't? You wanted to change but you didn't?
Yeah.
Okay, and all of you are in the same spot?
Yeah.
So what you just experienced is what it's like selling to companies. Because there's a theme, there's a concept called path dependency. Right? Have you ever seen a cow path? You've ever been going to a big field, there's these paths that grow. And so once the cows start going in one path, even though the path oftentimes is windy and there's a much straighter way to get there, or sometimes it goes like this and then all the way back down a hill, once the cows have developed that path, they almost never deviate from that path. Right? And that's what it's like selling, whether you're selling to a consumer, they have an idea in their mind of how their day works, whether it's a mobile app. Getting onto the home screen of an iPhone is virtually impossible, right? We all have our apps for travel, we have our apps for managing expenses, we have our apps for checking in different places, using social media. And if it's even worse if you're an enterprise, because if you're a big company, you have hundreds or thousands of people that are using a software platform. And trying to get people to change that platform is actually really, really hard, because people are inherently lazy. Companies and people at companies are lazy. And it's not that they want to be lazy. To get somebody in a company to be a motivating change agent, you get somebody to be a champion of your product and actually push through what could be a $100,000 sale, $1 million sale that could affect hundreds of different people. It's really, really, really hard. So just keep that in mind as you're developing your message, as we go through creating a value statement and identifying these are the things we're going to cover. So as you're thinking about the value statement, what's that?
Did you have a question?
Your question?
Yeah, no, we are come to this later, but is there also a concept of switching costs involved with?
Yeah, the switching costs. Well, so one of the reasons that people don't switch chairs a lot of times is because there's a cost of moving your bag, your computer, all the things. You're like, maybe you really don't want to sit here because it's too close. Maybe you really would prefer to sit back there. No? Maybe, right? But the cost of doing that and then finding somebody else to switch with you is actually pretty difficult. And it's the same way when you're switching software systems or hardware systems or getting people to change their behavior on how they treat the internet on their phone. And so as we're going through some of these objectives today in terms of creating value statements, identifying different buyer types, actually finding prospective buyers, and then identifying how you move a sale from introduction all the way through to close, it's important to consider this idea that just people are lazy and just the way things are. So you have to be pretty motivating, you have to have a pretty spectacular product and a pretty spectacular message in order to get people motivated enough to make a change. We're good? Yes? Okay. Cool. So the first thing we're going to spend, and the way that the workshop's going to work is I'm going to talk for a bit, we'll do some interaction, and then we'll give you a short activity. So all of you have different worksheets. We'll get to some of them. We won't get to all of them. That's okay, because there's so many things we could do and could learn. Mostly what we want to focus on today, though, is getting you some core message information and also building on what we learned back on Tuesday with Ryan. So Ryan was here, he did the lean startup. Everybody was here for that, for the lean startup. So a lot of what we learned in his workshop you can apply to the sales environment. So when you think about value statements, this is a really good place where you can think about how you're creating a message for certain customer segments. And so we're going to build off of what he taught you back on Tuesday. So there's a nice flow here. So the first thing I want to talk about when we're thinking about value statements is talking about why people buy. Why do companies buy products, or why does an enterprise buy a product? And there's 4 reasons. There's 4 reasons why. Generally, there's 4 reasons why people buy. The first is to increase revenue. Wow, we have somebody changing.
No, this is my coffee.
Oh, you just need coffee. That's a switching cost. So the first reason that people of enterprises in particular will buy a product is to increase revenue. The second reason is to decrease their costs. The third reason is to increase their efficiency. And the fourth reason is to decrease their risk. So that's increase revenue, decrease cost, increase efficiency, and decrease risk. So let's talk about this for a couple minutes.
Do you have to put these 4 in numbers? If you're going to increase your revenue, you're going to have a turnover bigger than 50% of today.
We're going to get to that.
Okay, sorry.
No, that's great. That's very intuitive. So the question was, do you have to put these metrics and numbers in? Absolutely. So when we get to actually constructing a value statement, that's one of the core tenets is to think in terms of numbers, because that's how people will respond. And I'll make all of these slides available to everyone too, by the way. So when we talk about these 4 areas, increasing revenue, decreasing costs, increasing efficiency, decreasing risk, what does it mean when we say increase revenue? Somebody's going to buy your product in order to increase revenue. What's an example, or what do we mean by that? Who has a product that when a company purchases your product, you're expecting them to actually increase the amount of money they make? What's your product?
Live streaming of concerts.
Live streaming of concerts, and how does that help? Who buys your product?
That's the end buyer is pretty much you and I, but the venues that we sell it into,
Mm-hmm.
they increase their capacity by having more online seats, I guess.
So they're basically selling more seats, more tickets to
Yeah.
a show.
Yeah.
And without your technology, they wouldn't be able to otherwise do this.
Yeah.
It's a great example of increasing revenue. Yep.
If I'm a distribution channel that you're not using, then that would be increase your revenue if you use my distribution
And what's your distribution channel? What's your company?
channel. This was a sort of example.
Oh, okay. Great.
But you can still
Yep.
sell it too.
Yeah, my company, I can stick, of course. New apps, we teach people how to play an instrument.
You teach people.
That's
how to
my
play.
company. But this was just like a sort of example.
Right. And how do you teach people to play an instrument?
Through mobile devices and by syncing audio, video, and the notation. So you get a much more musical way of learning how to play.
Does that help people learn faster?
Yes, and better.
Faster.
That's
and better.
right.
So which of the four is that for you?
Absolutely. Yeah. Efficiency.
So, like I've tried to learn different foreign languages. Right? There's one way to learn a foreign language, which is you can listen to audio tapes, or you can try to read or take a class. So you can take a class at Stanford or at a community college. You can go take a class once a week for 13 weeks, and you slowly start to learn a language. Or you can move to France, for example. If you move to France and nobody speaks anything but French to you, I guarantee you're going to learn French a lot faster than if you're trying to take it one class at a time over the course of several years. So in your case, it's the same concept where you're accelerating the learning using technology. So if I want to learn music, then using your tool would allow me to do that much more.
There's a risk part to it too, because if you want to learn how to play guitar, and then you go to YouTube, you will learn the wrong one, which is a risk for
interesting.
you. So if you come to me, you get the authenticity.
So you have some expertise as well in
Because
addition to just technology.
the composer or the
Yeah.
artist have approved it, so this
Right.
is the real way to learn.
Oh, okay.
So it would be a risk for you to go to YouTube.
Great. I like how you're thinking. So, and oftentimes you'll find there's sort of a primary and perhaps a secondary reason.
Yeah.
So we've covered revenue, we've covered efficiency. Does anybody else have a product that they think the core reason why somebody would buy is to increase efficiency?
I'm a bit unsure what product or which one of these my product works on.
Okay.
It's a glucose sensor that allows hospitals to reduce length of stay for patients. So I learned that they start using these kind of products because they reduce mortality, which is sort of a separate one
Mm-hmm.
from those. And then they do a cost-benefit analysis before actually deciding the purchase. But I'm not sure if in one sense, I'm increasing efficiency,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm also literally reducing costs.
Yes.
But I'm also increasing revenue because they can use those rooms to treat more patients.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, so you got a lot of work to do. You do. I mean, from an experimental standpoint, if you're thinking about just like from a lean startup standpoint, you can run sort of sales experiments, right? So as you start reaching out to different potential buyers, for some segments, you might try the efficiency angle as a value statement. Another, you might try cost. Another, you might try revenue. And even as we get into different buyer types, even in the same organization, when you talk to the hospital administrator, they might be focused on cost and efficiency. When you talk to the president of the hospital, then they might care about revenue because they want to treat as many patients. So you talk to doctors are thinking of it maybe only from a risk standpoint. So as you're working through an organization, you might actually need different value statements for different buyers, and we'll get to that in just a little while.
In my case, I'm B2B and B2C. So I'd say that what I just told you now is like B2C, the bottom ones.
Uh-huh.
And the top ones would be more B2B, because I'm helping a music publisher to make it digital versus of something they're already.
Oh, so you have a second side to your market?
Yes,
Oh,
and that
okay.
will help them increase revenue and it will
Right.
also help them reduce costs because they need to print and distribute it.
Perfect. So if you're
So-
talking to the musical composer,
Yeah.
and you said to the musical composer, we're going to help people learn how to play music
Yeah.
faster,
Yeah.
you think they really care?
No.
Do you think the composer cares if your tool helps people learn music faster? Or do they care about making more money? Or put it the other way, does the consumer who learns music, do they care that the music composer is actually making more money?
No, they don't do that, but the composer would care about whether they learn it faster or whether they want to play their music.
I'd be willing to guess they care more about the revenue.
Oh, of
Yeah.
course, more, but yeah, yeah.
Good, so cost, does anybody have a product specifically they think focuses on cost? Which
Yeah,
is-
House of Control helps to watch over other companies' contracts, contracts that will automatically renew themselves.
Ah,
So I feel like we have three of those. The efficiency of finding a contract faster, and the cost, saving money on contracts that are unutilized or that are not used. And the risk is wasting your time putting contracts into another solution that doesn't follow up or work.
as a salesperson, I don't like your system.
I can understand that. We
It's a
You
wonderful
want that
idea.
contract, but-
I hope that none of my customers ever buy it.
Hey, what about my contract? That's the first.
So
thing.
I just this week had a conversation with I work at a company called Lend. We do mortgage software. So we sell to banks like Wells Fargo and Bank of America. One of our customers is a very, very big mortgage investor. And I got a phone call from a contract consultant who said, I saw that your contract is due for renewal in 2 months, December 23rd, it's due for renewal. So I wanted to contact you now because I talked to the business unit already, and the business unit said they're only using about 2/3 of the information that's in the statement of work. So I'd like to talk with you about reducing the price. And I said, wow, that's a pretty good system you have there. So now we're in negotiation where I was hoping it would just sort of, actually, I was thinking about a price increase. Because we have upgraded our software and we've done some other things, and now she's starting the conversation with, we're gonna be looking to decrease your price. So
Yeah.
absolutely cost, and that's big for big companies. And the last one, risk. Is anybody focused specifically on risk? I thought I saw like a security company of some kind, or is that yours?
We do alarm centers or way to actually make efficient communication between digital devices and alarm centers,
Okay,
like a backend solution.
okay. And how does that reduce risk?
It reduces the way from when the information is gathered
Mm-hmm.
until it's delivered. Today it's a problem because all the systems are so old and so complicated, so they don't get the information in time for
Okay.
to treat the patients.
Ah,
So they
okay.
can actually start treating the patients in the ambulance instead of when they're coming to the hospital.
Wow, okay, so it's also efficiency.
Yeah.
It's also efficiency. Okay, good. So I know that this is, Clayton Christensen comes up a lot. He's, one of the gods here in Silicon Valley, I guess. And I think Ryan mentioned it as well in his presentation. And so one of the questions that Clayton Christensen likes to ask people is, what job are your customers hiring you to do? Have you all heard of Clayton Christensen? Yeah. So there's one of his famous stories is that as a consulting company, he was hired by a fast food company to go and understand why in the morning they found that people were buying milkshakes. Have you heard this story? Some of you have, some of you haven't. So it was unusual. Milkshakes is sort of a sweet drink. It's one you usually have in the afternoon or in the evening. And they were trying to figure out, why do people buy milkshakes in the morning? So they interviewed customers, and what they found out from the people that were buying the milkshakes, they tended to be people that had a long driving commute. And they liked the milkshake because it was thick, and they could chew on the straw. It kind of, if you're sitting in the car for a long time, you sort of get bored after a while. So the milkshake provided some level of entertainment. It's true. I mean, a milkshake, you get a nice big milkshake, it takes a while. Plus it fills you up a bit. So if you get up at 6 in the morning and you get to your office by 9 because you have a long commute, by 9 o'clock, if you had breakfasted, 6 in the morning, like 9, you might be a little hungry. So now you have this nice big milkshake sitting in your stomach. So what they found is the job that people were basically hiring them, think of it as hiring the milkshake to entertain them, not just to feed them. And so as a change, what they did is they actually introduced a thicker solution to the milkshakes in the morning that made customers happy. So like sucking a milkshake through a straw, they actually made it more difficult. And they found that consumers were happier because it made the milkshake last longer. And they also made the straws smaller. Right? Because again, it took longer to consume the milkshake. Versus in the afternoons, when parents came in with their kids, they made sure that the milkshakes were much thinner and the straws were bigger. Because do any of you have kids? You ever watch a kid eat a milkshake? It takes a really long time. But I have a 2.5-year-old, and it takes like an hour and a half to eat dinner. It's just like, it takes forever. So as a parent, you're in the restaurant, the last thing you want to do is sit there like waiting for your child to finish this milkshake. So the idea that behind this is what job is ultimately your customer hiring you to do, is your product to do. So now that we've taken what we know about the reasons people buy, and we think of it in terms of what job people are hiring you to do, the first exercise that we're going to do together is to construct an actual value statement. So, Eva, is it?
Yeah.
So you were asking about numbers. So these are sort of three really good rules, or 3 different ways to think about how to frame your value statement. One is to focus on the problem you solve. So the milkshake one is a good example in terms of the problem that's being solved is boredom and hunger. Thinking about what the customer needs are. So what does the customer need? In the case of, if it's trying to decrease the risk of that electronic transaction, trying to increase revenue, trying to turn over hospital beds more quickly, whatever the core needs are, your value statement should focus on that. And thinking in numbers. So when you say not just will increase revenue in your hospital, it's really understanding how those, if you can figure out how hospitals operate. What is one bed in a hospital worth per day or even per hour? And then breaking that down. And if you can truly understand that and articulate it, communicate that to your customers in a value statement, and that first approach you have, that first chance that we have that number 1 on the screen, the first time you speak with one of your buyers, one of your potential customers, you're actually really going to focus in on what they care most about.
What if it's very hard to think in numbers?
Give me an example.
Well, we're making basically a flying cameraman. So it's
Flying cameraman, this is the drone, you're the drones?
Yeah. So, I mean, it follows you around, and it gives you an awesome film that you can share with your friends. But I mean, quantifying how awesome the film will be in numbers is very difficult.
Yeah. And that's sort of the challenge sometimes when you're doing B2C versus B2B. If I'm a business manager, I'm thinking a lot about numbers. As a consumer, it may not be. One of the ways that you might be able to do that is to draw a comparative activity that someone may not necessarily quantify, but they can relate with. So if, for example, if I'm a downhill skier and I know that this drone is going to film me skiing downhill, trying to describe in words the value of that, having that experience captured forever, showing somebody that you went down this really difficult hill and that you avoided the tree, whatever is, in economic terms, it's called utility. So how do you measure the utility that somebody gets? And in the consumer world, it's oftentimes felt more emotionally than it is from a pure business sense.
But an alternative is to rent a pilot with a helicopter.
Oh, there you go.
So that's the cost.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I mean,
Yeah.
a helicopter is $2,000 an hour, $3,000 an hour. I don't know. It's like
Yeah. I mean, nobody can afford that.
Exactly. All right, we're done. No, that's an excellent point. I mean,
It's a huge value.
that is a huge value. I've been skiing in Switzerland once. I skied there, and we did a helicopter skiing adventure, and it was expensive. And I always I knew we were on this massive mountain. We were the only people there, and I always wished that I had some kind of video of that. Because it's really before iPhones and stuff, so it wasn't like I could take a selfie of skiing. You know. I'm not a very good skier, so doing anything besides concentrating on skiing while I'm skiing would not be a good idea. So yeah, I mean, this is a really good example. And you had Nicholas, you had.
No, it was the same point though, but if you were selling to the business, selling product to businesses, not necessarily consumers, then you could literally explain how much, like, you can actually have that third person, those third person shots without renting that helicopter, and that's a very concrete saving.
Yeah.
But for consumers, I mean, you go more emotionally and focus on the awesomeness of sharing that experience or showing off to your friends.
The showing off is a big deal. Yeah. Yeah, definitely showing off. So what I'd like you to do, this is our first formal exercise, is to write a value statement framing your product in terms of why a customer buys, and using those rules of focusing on the problem you solve, thinking about the customer need that your solution satisfied, and trying to think in terms of numbers. So you got the 4 reasons people buy: revenue, increase revenue, decrease cost, increase efficiency, decrease risk, and thinking about those 3 parameters. So we're going to take like 5 minutes, and actually, I want you to actually write this out. So this is it's sort of similar to some of the work you did with Ryan in terms of thinking about testing your different hypotheses for what you're working on. So you want to translate that learning into a sales environment. So just to keep us on track, I'll start my timer for 5 minutes, and then we'll share it. Pretty good? Okay. Any success? Anybody want to share? Who hasn't said much that wants to say something? I teach in university classes as well, so sometimes I have to actually call on people. But I won't do that here. Okay. And remind everybody what your company does.
Yeah, quote in a minute, print quotes in a minute online.
What is it?
Print quotes.
Print quotes.
Yeah.
Okay. For like paper
Yeah.
copies, things like that. Okay.
Quoting and managing orders is time consuming and complex for printing houses. Arific reduces the quoting time with 80%, so you can go from 5 estimators to 1.
That's good. That's really good. I would probably, you don't need to restate the problem if people know that exists.
Okay.
You could probably just start with the second half, which reducing by 80%, go from 5 estimators to 1. Good. Who else wants to go?
What we do is in the answer here. Charitable foundations will buy our application management system because they want to be more efficient and save costs by at least 75%.
Okay.
And appear more professional. That's
And-
an extra.
And appear more professional.
Yeah.
Okay. And what would appearing more professional do?
Make them look better.
And what does that do?
Maybe attract more applicants.
Ah.
I don't know what it would do.
And what does attracting more applicants do?
Make more work for them.
Oh, it makes more work for them?
More to do.
And what charitable foundations, these are for donations or?
Yes.
Okay. So if you appear more professional, would that increase or decrease your chance for getting more donations? I'd be willing to guess it would increase. I mean, if I'm gonna go potentially offer money, spend money, give money away, and somebody's got some old website that looks pretty unprofessional, maybe less likely. Maybe I'll send $20 instead of $100. I mean, it might be something you'd be interested in testing as well.
Yeah, it might be easier for them to get donations so that they have more to donate themselves. Yes.
And what about your process is different than the existing technology? Why is it better?
It's,
Why does it do 75%?
It's a web-based tool. It makes them able to manage. Normally, small foundations, they use lawyers to do the work for them. They pay lawyers to do it. But they can do it, the lawyer or the secretary in the foundation to do it themselves much faster because they use, they get everything in one system instead of having emails, written applications, lots of attachments using Excel. So this is more like a CRM for charitable foundations.
Okay. And the phenomenon of using lawyers, is that something you tested here? Because if I donate money, I usually just write a check and send it via mail, or I.
Yeah, but this is the charitable foundation that is donating money to various causes. And the foundation, the other foundation or person who has a cause, they apply for a grant, a
I
donation.
see.
It's like scholarships, a little bit more?
Yeah.
Yeah, also scholarships.
So, okay. So my wife is a PhD student, and she often applies for grants
Yeah.
to these organizations, and it sounds like it's that sort of interface between larger organizations to a university, for example.
She'll log into her system, make a user profile, and then find the foundation in the system to which she can apply.
Okay, so you're speeding up the whole transaction entirely, right?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Just trying to think if we can strengthen your value statement. I think you're on the right track, Kevin, from an efficiency standpoint. We could probably do more for that.
You have something on the same company.
Yes.
Oh, this will be interesting.
Yeah. Our customers want to spend less time on administration. That means reduced costs and increased efficiency. They also want to increase the quality of applications, which means reduce risk.
Okay.
Yeah.
How does it increase the quality of the applications?
They get more applicants, and they by using the system they can share the applications between people, so they can give access.
So instead of having, let's say I've got $1 million available to hand out, instead of getting only 10 applicants, maybe I can get 100.
Correct.
And make sure so that if I'm going to spend that $1 million, that it goes to the best applicant, not just the one that happened to fill out the paperwork.
Yes.
Makes sense to me. So I would keep working on it. I mean, you guys are definitely on the right track. Think about shortening it a little bit. And as part, and this kind of goes into the lean startup as well, is thinking about sort of a persona, like the person that's responsible for administrating that kind of program, and focusing on the message for that kind of person. Because you're going to have, as we get into buyer types in just a few minutes, you can have the person that's administering the program, then you've got the technology person that actually supports the administration person. So you're going to have to get both of those people to agree.
And if you have user cases from Norway, you can use the
Yeah.
to quantify.
Definitely. Yeah.
Give a number.
If I just could add something from my space, which is music and culture, in Norway there's a lot of funding for music and culture projects and all that. And there's a feeling that it's the people who are best at writing the applications that get the money, not the best cases.
Mm-hmm.
Because the best artists, the best ideas and projects, they couldn't be bothered with it.
Yeah.
And that's a huge problem with the whole system.
Right.
And that could be something that you could help solve.
Yeah, because somebody may not be good at explaining what it is that they do, but they could be the best scientist in there. Okay, let's do one more.
I'm part of the live streaming startup. So increase revenue by extending your audience unlimited beyond the venue capacity.
Okay. What's an example of percentage revenue or number of tickets that you think?
I mean, we had one case where there were 100 people in the venue and about 3,500 watching online.
Okay, and how much revenue did that account for?
Well, it was free.
It was
a
free.
free, so it's only during the
You're sort of testing.
testing phase. It kind of shows the potential.
Okay. Yeah, so early as you're developing your idea, you might focus on audience engagement as your value metric, as your value statement. And then you're going to have to experiment with how much people are willing to pay. And then as you get more data, you'll be able to actually
Yeah, we are pretty
alter,
early on in that.
yeah,
in that
you'll be able to
sense.
modify your value statement with that additional information. Do you have any hypothesis or any sort of idea how much you think right now? Like if you were to guess.
But you could charge the
Yeah.
viewers. I mean, it will really depend on the content and size of the artist, but what we have like thought is between $5 or $10
$5 or $10. Okay.
That's like our initial assumption.
So like one art, like a musician might be one price, but a speaker might be a different price.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or depending on the size of the artist or the quality. I mean, some venues will have like a bigger production, and some venues might just have one camera. So it will kind of depend
So
on
the quality of.
Yeah, the idea is to kind of make the venues or the people that are hosting the shows kind of put a price themselves,
Mhm.
and that price will kind of give a signal to the viewers of what to expect of the content.
Right. So one way to think about your value statement right now, even though you don't have any hard data around the revenue, you might say, with one customer we increased the viewership by whatever it was, 300, 3,000?
3,000.
By 3,000 viewers, and as we roll this technology out, we expect that would have equaled at least $30,000 in revenue.
Yeah.
So you can sort of, as long as you use words like we believe or we think, as opposed to it will, then it's completely legitimate. Because as we're thinking about that one customer, that first customer, that's the first one that's going to pay you money, you need somebody who actually latches onto the idea. Because there might be someone that says, 33,000 people, that's okay, I don't really care. Oh, but you mean I might make $30,000 more? Now I care. So, in thinking about what you want your product to do, what you think it would do, it's okay to, in your value statement, propose ideas, as long as they have some legitimacy. Let's do one more.
I have a problem because I have several different kind of approaches
Okay.
depending on the B2B customer. One of our approaches is towards insurance companies because they will obviously save a lot of claim costs.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one is against hospitals, and they are actually helping people to survive, but they want to keep the patients as long as possible in the system to move on. And then we have the third one, which is large corporations who want to secure their workers and loan workers and so on. So it's like three different value propositions depending on.
Yes, it is 3 different value propositions, and that's different than 3 different value statements for a buyer.
Yeah.
So the propositions you're thinking about is different segments, customer segments,
Yes.
and within those segments you have different personas. In our case, you're thinking about that one buyer.
So I'm thinking about the end consumer, or the one.
Who is actually, in your case, is it the insurance company that you're selling to?
No, that's just one of the customers. It's large
If you could sell to
corporations.
one person today, who would it be? Or one company, who would it be?
It would be a large insurance company.
Okay, then focus on that. Focus your value statement just on that insurance company. Don't worry about the other ones right now. Because until you can get that one, it doesn't matter what all 3 think. If you try to do all 3, you might end up getting 0. Okay, good. So another way, if you're not entirely sure, there's a worksheet here. We're not going to do it just because I want to make sure we save time. This is a really good exercise. Some of you that may have taken some business courses, there's a methodology called 5 whys. So if somebody gives you a problem and you want to test if whether or not it's a root, if that's the root of the problem, you do what's called a 5 whys analysis. So the idea is if somebody were to, let's use the music example again. If somebody said, well, look, I'm interested in growing my audience I'm a promoter, I'm interested in growing the audience for my venues, except I can only fill 5,000 seats. Then you'd ask them, well, why is that a problem? Well, it's a problem because I have greater demand than I can charge for ticket prices. Okay, and why did that, or what have you done, or why has that become an issue for you? Well, it becomes an issue because I have people who want to go to the concert and I'm sold out. And the other problem is that sometimes these tickets end up getting sold in a secondary market for even a higher price than the ticket price. And that frustrates my consumers even more because now the people that couldn't get the original ticket, in order for them to go, they have to pay twice as much or 3 times as much. Okay? And why is that a problem? Well, it's a problem because now my best fans, the people that love the music the most, now are upset because they can't go to the concert. So you sort of dig through that and you go, oh, well, what if we could give you an opportunity to sell more seats and meet the demand? Or the people that can't afford $50 seats live, but they'd be willing to do live stream for $10. Now you've expanded that audience. So sort of working through this 5 whys can be really helpful to get to the root cause of why somebody feels like they have an issue. And then that can also help you target the value statement appropriately. So if we had more time, we would do this together. But if you're having trouble as you start experimenting with your value statements, if it doesn't seem like you're getting traction with the value statement you've developed, then this is something to come back to make sure you really understand that business. It's called 5 whys. Good. So then the next, we'll go a couple more minutes and we'll just take a quick stand-up break and all that stuff. The next section that we want to talk about is what we call buyer types. So in the beginning of our conversation, we talked about focusing on one company, and we created a value statement thinking about your product in terms of those 4 reasons that a company or a person might buy your product. The next thing we want to do is start drilling into within that company, especially if you're selling B2B, you're going to have multiple decision makers. And it's usually not 2, it could be 10, it could be 50. I've been in situations where we've had to do presentations to 100 different potential buyers and users within an organization. They all had some kind of say in the decision. So it gets pretty crazy pretty quick. And so Ryan had talked about this idea of doing, this is one of his slides, talking about doing customer segments and thinking about asking these questions about like what is the pain that they have, how much budget authority, what is their buying process now, who do they listen to, and then grouping the answers, figuring out how these different buyers tend to group together based on these different the answers to these questions. And so it can be different for different companies. Generally speaking though, I think as a starting point, if you've not ever thought about different buyer types or decision makers within an organization, I like to think about just these 4. There's typically 4 types of buyers in a company. We'll talk about those. So the first is the user buyer. So this is the person that's using the software. Does the user buyer frequently have budget authority? Anne's shaking her head. No. Yeah, the user of software frequently, you might sell an enterprise license that's 100 seats, or you might sell 100 hardware products. And the people that are physically using that product typically don't have any budget authority. However, why are they important?
You're part of convincing the people who has authority.
Yeah, they're convincing, and they also have usually the best information about what's actually happening within the business.
I mean, recently there's been a lot of business models that are focused more on building a following from the users, and then just allow them to push the buyers.
Yeah.
That hasn't happened before, quite recently, hasn't it?
Yeah, so a couple of examples of that are Yammer. So Yammer is sort of a famous example of that, where they had salespeople basically give away this application for free. They allowed the salespeople to use it to communicate internally. And then once they saw at a company that maybe they had 100 salespeople using Yammer, then Yammer would walk in and say, hey, did you know you have 100 people using it? We have this enterprise edition that is $10,000 a month. And since you already have these users, it's a really great value for you. And that's how they'd actually generate. So by targeting the user buyers to use the product, they're able to actually get a sale. So it's a combination of that strategy, plus using a bit of a freemium model as well. So the idea here is that the user buyer, this is in your case, I think, was the nurses. Right? You said they're the ones that are actually using your product, but they're not the ones that are writing the check. And they might not even have direct communication with the person that's writing the check. You do need to still understand what that user buyer is doing every day, because if your product requires the users to do something totally different every day than they've done that's outside of the rest of the process, it doesn't matter if the person wants to write the check, if the people at the bottom don't end up using it, using your contract example, then if the users aren't using what's getting paid for, you might get a short-term sale, but you won't get a long-term relationship. So the user buyer is one buyer type to think about. And as you're thinking about a value statement, the value statement for the user buyer, as you're talking to user buyer groups, is going to be different than another buyer type, which is the economic buyer. So what is the economic buyer? How do you think about the economic buyer? Who is the economic buyer?
CFO.
Could be a CFO. Less specific though. Why is the economic buyer a specific kind of buyer? What does this person ultimately do?
Responsible for a budget?
Yeah, responsible for budget, responsible for actually making the payment. The ones that will take all of the information that comes from a user buyer and a technical buyer, which we'll talk about, and then they're the ones that make the decision. So you can have, in the case of Yammer, maybe there's 100 users using Yammer. And the IT person, the tech buyer, says, wow, this is a great software, there's no security issues at all. But if the CFO of the company decides, look, we don't have budget, or I'm not going to pay for some enterprise version of this software, you don't have a sale. So even though the user buyer thinks it's great, the technical buyer says it's okay. If the economic buyer says no, if you haven't reached that person and found a value statement that makes sense to them, then you're not going to be able to execute on that sale. And so the technical buyer, what exactly does the technical buyer do?
It's an obstacle.
It's an obstacle. Yeah.
Every time.
Yep. So, so when I was growing up as a kid, frequently my mom was the technical buyer. And here's why. If I wanted to do something fun, like I wanted to go stay at a friend's house, I wanted to go to a different neighborhood or something, I knew as long as I told my dad would be like, that's fine, I don't care. But then he'd always say, I don't care, go ask your mother. So then I have to go explain to my mom. She was the one that could either say yes or no. Like, yes, this makes sense, no, it doesn't. So the technical buyer oftentimes is the person, they won't necessarily be the person that will get you the sale, but they can certainly make it so that you don't get the sale. So if you're selling software or anything that's related to hardware, then that technical buyer is the person that's going to do that true evaluation. So they're the ones that are going to look at your software code. They're the ones that are going to make sure that your business model is sound. I work a lot with banks, as I mentioned, so we use Amazon Web Services to host our software and host customer data. Now, banks don't like the idea that customer data is in the cloud somewhere. So there are technical buyers involved with our software product that have said, no, you cannot use this software at our bank. So the economic buyer wants to use it, all the users want to use it, but the technical buyer said, no, it's too risky, we can't afford that risk. So the answer is no. And it happens.
So the tech buyer is in essence someone, a person in the decision process that has a veto, right? But can't really.
Yeah, exactly. Because even if your technical buyer is your target customer, like if you're selling a security system, they might say, yeah, this is a great security system, I want to use it, but the economic buyer can still say no. So think of the technical buyer, a lot of times we think of it as like a CTO, like a chief technology officer, or a VP of engineering. But it might just be, it may be more of a figurehead, like a chief risk officer. Like if you are selling to an insurance company, for example, they're always thinking about risk. So it might be a chief risk officer that may end up being your technical buyer. But frequently it's more of a software or hardware or technology kind of person. And then the fourth buyer type is the product champion. What does the product champion do for you?
It loves the product.
They what?
It loves the product.
Loves your product?
Yeah.
And what do they do for you?
Everybody else they meet in the company, they'll stop and tell them how awesome your product is.
Yeah.
Starters try to basically start a wildfire inside the company and build support for your product.
Ideally, yeah, absolutely. A good product champion, has anybody had a meeting with a company, let's say with a technology officer or like a high-level executive, and before the meeting, they had somebody else in the company that said, hey, look, before we get to this meeting, make sure you talk about this, and make sure you tell them about that, and don't talk about those things. You ever had that? You're nodding your head, you had a situation?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you have that, if you find that if you have somebody who's doing that for you, then you have a product champion. And oftentimes, the product champion can be the person that first gets you into the organization. You might meet somebody at a conference, or you meet somebody at a networking event and they say, wow, this is a really great product. I'd love to, introduce you to everyone else in our company that would be involved with this process. So sometimes they're the gateway into a company. Oftentimes though, you might not have that advantage, and you might speak to an economic buyer or a technical buyer, but over time, as they become more familiar with your product, they actually turn into a product champion. So if you're maybe a technology buyer that can look at security and do all those things, they can veto a deal, well, they might also become so in love with your product that they can then also help you. So sometimes it's not a separate person. It can be, maybe it's a user buyers, maybe it's like a head nurse that has been there for 30 years and has a lot of authority. That nurse knows the ins and outs of the whole organization. There's the org chart, and then there's the way the company really runs. So if you finally have that head nurse, it could be a user buyer. It helps you understand, yeah, the CFO always talks about budget, but what he really cares about is this or that. So you're always constantly looking for this product champion. Sometimes you can get multiple champions. Sometimes that person might change as you evolve through a sales process. But typically, as you're approaching your companies and you're selling your products, if you're not sure who these 4 people are in the sales opportunity, then you have a problem. You need to fix it. If you're not sure who your user buyer is, if you're not sure who your economic buyer is, if you're not sure who your technical buyer is, or if you're not sure you even have a product champion, you need to go figure out who these 4 people are. Make sense? So let's take like 10 minutes just to stretch our legs, in case somebody wants some more coffee, do all that. And when we come back, we'll talk more about organization and how you can thinking about those value statements in terms of the different aspects. So, yeah, and frequently you actually won't even get everyone in the same room. I mean, how many times? I mean, it may be that at this organization, these 5 people that I've outlined are never in the same place at the same time. Like the office external affairs person is always out of the office. The program manager is always in the office. The CEO is always going around doing different CEO things. The contracting and information technology could actually be contracted out. Could be a consultant that does that work. And they're based in a totally different state. So that's where having these different messages, you're talking one-on-one, working through the decision process. That's why you need to have a different message so that when they do all come together for a decision, that the program manager is sold on your idea, maybe not for the same reason as this person or this person or this person. And that's why you want to target your different value statements based on the different buyer types that you have. And so when I said before that if you're not sure who those different buyer types are, or you haven't identified them, you need to go figure out who those are, because they're the ones that are ultimately going to come together and make that decision. Who wants to share one of their value statements based on a specific buyer type? I saw lots of people writing stuff. Okay.
I was looking at my user buyer, asked the people who's actually selling B2C directly to the consumer insurance.
Okay.
Because they are the ones actually in the end going to use the product. So I said adding value to your end consumer and making our sales more easy.
And how could you add numbers to that?
That's difficult.
Why?
I don't know how I can increase their sales.
Okay.
But what I can say is that I can increase customer loyalty
Ah,
by a lot.
okay. What does that do?
Because now they have a lot of people running around shopping for insurances, and there's a lot of companies who only sell like an insurance shopping mall online.
Mm-hmm.
And there, if you put your medical information into one place where it's safely secured, stored, and be distributed in an emergency situation, you won't change that. So you probably be their client for life.
So I think you can very clearly say how you would increase revenue. If you know that that loyalty is going to keep somebody in that marketplace where you are, then that's clearly going to increase revenue. So now it's your job. Now what you need to do is go figure out and create some measurement around that, and then include that in your value statement.
Yeah. And then I have the technical buyer. It's the security people, and like you say, risk management and security people.
Right.
Then you have to tell them about the stability of the platform.
Right.
How we actually.
And verbalize it for me. Tell me exactly what the value statement is.
I said that no implementation cost, no work for them to implement it.
Mhm.
They get a fully fledged platform which they can actually distribute to their users. Where they have no risk for the software, we take risk for the software.
Be careful saying there's no risk. There's always risk.
Low risk.
Low risk.
Yeah.
So instead think about how you reduce risk,
Yeah.
and you have to figure out a way to communicate that. So what I would challenge you to do is be a lot more specific.
You said before, to us earlier, that it would take like 20 minutes to install.
Yeah.
That's a number of views.
Yeah.
As compared to what? What's the normal?
For building up security or like a central or crisis situation, it would take a week.
Oh.
To build up an emergency service. We can
Okay.
do it in 20 minutes.
That sounds significant. I would include that in your value statement. Yeah.
And then the economic buyer, of course, they can save about 20% on claim costs because they can direct persons to the right hospitals. They can do much faster response.
Is 20% significant?
It is significant for them.
How do you know?
Because it's millions.
Okay.
It's millions on claim costs. That's the biggest issue. They have people just working to reduce claim costs.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Big teams of people just trying to
Right.
reduce claim costs.
So think about 20% sometimes might not seem like a lot if instead you can articulate using a user case or an expected user case.
Yeah.
If you said, look, for a company your size, we find that the reduction of 20% equals $7 million in costs each year. Because 20%, somebody might not even really know what 20% means. But if you have shown that you've done the homework for a company your size, that means approximately $5 to $7 million per year. I don't know what the numbers are, you have to figure that
That's
out.
possible. It's fine.
Because at a smaller company, $1 million might be a lot.
Mm.
At a big company, $1 million is not even worth it. I've been in plenty of situations where I propose to people I can save you $1 million a year, and they're like, dude, I do $50 billion in revenue per year. Like $1 million is nothing to me. I'm looking for $1 billion problems, not $1 million problems to solve. So you want to scale that to make sure. And that could also help you figure out where to target your initial sales, because the 20% might be more significant for a small company versus. Did you want to share? I saw your hand up.
Yeah, I was just wondering about the increase in revenue, if that can be any currency. So can we say to people that you will be a cool person if you use our product? Like,
Say again.
like can we say that people can increase their coolness?
Social
instead of-
capital.
Social
Yeah.
capital.
YouTube, for example.
Can you, like, it doesn't have to be money to increase your revenue, it could be like, you'll have more friends or.
More followers.
More likes, more followers,
Yeah.
more page views on YouTube. Sure. If that's what that person cares about. Like if you're a consulting company, like we are, if you have some technology that said, hey, I'm gonna increase your Twitter followers by 50% in 3 weeks, I'm interested in that. Sure. Or I'm gonna have, increase the number of people that subscribe to your Udemy course by 25%. I'm like, tell me more. I'm at least interested to hear more.
Because I think a lot of the people who want to use it, they are interested in getting sponsors, and if they're going to get sponsors, they need a lot of friends.
That's right. They need to show their sponsors they've got a big following. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a good way to think about it. Good. Make sense? We good? We go on. I had an economics class with this guy, Dr. Lau. Dr. Lau, we had a 3-hour class every Tuesday night, and he did everything on the chalkboard. And it was basically a math class, because it's like a master's in economics. And he would write for like 20 minutes and never turn around. And he would talk just to the chalkboard, and there'd be like clouds of dust. And every once in a while he'd turn around and go, is it clear? Yes? We go on! He's like, no! I had a question 15 minutes ago. So that's why I say we go on. It's in respect for Dr. Lau.
I thought you said Dr. Loud.
No, he was loud though.
Yeah.
He was loud enough he could talk to the blackboard. He could say, Okay, so the next section we want to talk about, so we've talked about value statements, we've talked about buyer types, we've talked about now how to direct your value statements based on the different buyers, sort of getting more and more detailed, more technical. Now the next question is like, okay, how do I go find these people that we're talking about? We certainly can use investors, we can use our network, we can use referrals as much as we can, but a lot of times you just have to go do the work. So I wanted to spend a section on what we call prospecting. Is this a challenge for some of you?
Yes.
Yeah, a little bit of a challenge. So I'm going to share with you a couple of things that I've done that have been pretty successful for me. I think you'll be able to take some of these practices. And the same thing here. We talked about, I want to keep coming back to this idea of one. Right? You're just trying to find one, try to get one contact at a time. Right? It's a classic, proving an experiment is you need to figure out what gets one person engaged and then repeat that. And make sure it works for the second one, and then the third. If you're trying to do too much, trying to accomplish too many things at one time, you'll end up accomplishing nothing. So as you're going and finding these, your early buyers, Ryan talked about these as being early adopters. So as a startup, you've got a tremendous luxury. And the luxury is you don't have any customers. That's the best part about being a startup. It is. Because you get to choose and go find these early adopters. You don't have to go sell to everyone in the world. It seems to me it would be really hard to be IBM because you've got millions of customers that you have to worry about. Anytime you launch a new product or make a change to a product, it's not just how many new customers can we get, it's like making sure we don't bother the other millions of people that are using it. I mean, think about when Facebook makes certain changes to their platform now, whether it's like a privacy setting or they change where a button is. It's like Facebook changes one button and like Twitter blows up for like a week. People are annoyed. Like, oh my God, how could you change that button? How could you change that privacy setting? It's really hard to be a big company because all you're doing is managing your current customer base. Whereas as a startup, all we're looking for is that very first customer. And so your job is to go out and find those early adopters. And if you find quickly in your conversations the person you're talking with doesn't seem like you're an early adopter, that's okay. Don't try to force it too far because there's plenty of early adopters out there that you can go find. So Ryan talked about it in terms of the technology distribution curve where you have innovators and early adopters. So we're basically, at some point you have to worry about crossing the chasm. I think that's what Jeffrey Moore called it, crossing the chasm, and getting into the big distribution curve. But for right now, we're just trying to find a few people in this area. And so some of the things that I want to try to share with you here is just the idea of approaching and finding some of those people. So either you can find those early adopters, or the second sort of early buyer that you can look for are people in this situation. Like if you're in that situation, you need a solution, right? So you're like you may not be necessarily an early adopter, but your problem is so severe that you're willing to try anything, right? So there's sort of two ways to think about it. You like cats? I have 2 cats at home. This is not my cat. Do not take this picture. I'm not cruel to animals. My son can be cruel to animals because he's 2 and he chases the cats around. So I wanted to actually walk you through a case study of my own experience over the last couple of weeks. So as I mentioned, I sell software in the bank industry. And so last week, there was this big annual conference, the MBA, means Mortgage Bankers Association. And so I signed up for this conference and I thought, okay, going to this conference is going to be 4,000 banking executives that are at this conference. And it's like, how do I find the right people in 4,000? It's like, of these 4,000, most of them are not early adopters. It's just the way the banking sector works. Many of them are pretty high-ranking executives, so it's going to be hard to find them. So I've got 4,000 people to sift through, and I've only got 2.5 days. So even if I was in a perfect world, I could do 1 meeting per hour, right? That's what, at best, 10 meetings a day, which would just completely wipe you out. So at best, you have maybe 15 spots to fill over 2 days. So how do you fill those 15 spots with the right people? So the first thing I did is I went to the conference website, and they have a list of all the people that are attending the conference. Now, in a perfect world, they would actually have that in a spreadsheet. But this conference they actually didn't. You can only view 20 attendees at a time. So I spent an hour. I would do click, copy, paste. Click, copy, paste. It took me an hour to do it, but I got through all 4,000 and I put them on into a spreadsheet. This is the grind. This is the things you'll have to do sometimes. Just so you know, it's not magic. There's no magic here. So once I got all 4,000 people into an Excel spreadsheet, then the next thing I did is I sorted them by company name, just I chose that column. And for me in our software, we're specifically been targeting one subsection of the banking sector, which is called mortgage servicing. It's irrelevant what it is. But the idea is that, there's 4,000 people, I'm just going to do a control F and search for anybody who has the word servicing in their title. And then I found this guy, Chris Shugart. Never heard of him before, he's never heard of me before. I went to his LinkedIn profile, and he's a third level connection. So we don't even have anybody in common that I could reach out to. So the way I found him on LinkedIn, are you guys all on LinkedIn? Are you using it? Some, maybe. So the way I found him is I just took his name, his title, his bank, and searched him, and the word LinkedIn. So if you've ever used LinkedIn search capabilities, is it very good? It sucks. It's terrible. But if you go to Google and you type in somebody's name and title and their company and then the word LinkedIn, it's almost always the first hit is their profile. It's just a little shortcut for you. So I went to Chris's profile, and does anybody use InMails? Use InMails? Success? Use Success with InMails?
Yeah, lately more than before, I think.
Really? And why do you think that is?
I think people just use it more than they used it in the past, and more than actually their email.
Yeah, I think there's more people on LinkedIn, which helps, and more people are paying for, they're building up their networks. And so to use InMails, you have to have a premium subscription. I think it's like $25 a month, and you get three InMails. I pay for I think it's $100 a month, you get 25 InMails, because I use LinkedIn all the time for my business. So I basically cold emailed this guy. I researched him, I made sure he was the right kind of person, identified him, he would be a user buyer in our world. But he's a director, so he's a fairly significant person, and he definitely could be the kind of person that can help me understand more about whether or not that company would be interested in our software. And so I typed out an email, and I wrote down, Robert was asking me on the way over here, he's like, what do you say in these emails sometimes? What makes for a good email? Well, it turns out that the way that I structure my emails is I start with, the first thing I ask him is why. I give him the why. So it's important to be really specific as early as possible, and I'll make all these slides available. So I said, hi Chris, I came across your profile from the NBA conference attendance list. Okay, how did I find you? I read more about your focus on mortgage servicing at South State. So making sure that I knew his role, right? And I thought you'd be a good person to ask. So immediately, I'm letting him know that I understand what his background is, and based on my research, I thought he would be the right person. So sort of putting him and getting this feeling like he's somebody special. I mean, he is, but I'm going to make sure he knows it. So the next thing is then getting very quickly to the request. What are you asking for? So a lot of times what I've seen is people will give lots of information and then put a question all the way at the end. So if you get to the question, it's my belief, if you get to the question earlier, then it provides context for everything else that you're going to share with them. So my question to him was, would you happen to have 20 minutes next week for a few questions about compliance and mortgage servicing? Really, in our industry, that's actually a pretty specific topic right now that's pretty important. It's compliance with mortgage servicing. So I've given him, why did I contact you? I've proven to him that I've checked him out a little bit, put in my request. Then I showed him who I am. So I said, our company, Blend Labs, is an early stage mortgage technology company. As software people, we've been specifically trying to understand more about risk management and compliance in mortgages. and we'd like to learn more about this from the perspective of regional banks like you. So it's not until I gave him the what that I gave him the sort of background about our company. So it's my belief that getting the question up here gives him the reason to keep moving on. Right? Then I always try to insert like a little bit of my personality. So I'm a fairly outgoing person. I try to use humor as much as I can. And I said, look, I can't offer much in return for your time right now except the Starbucks and good karma. Though I do promise both. And I wrote that right in the email. And finally, if there's some level of commonality, in our case we were third level connections, so we didn't know any of the same people. But it turns out he went to a college called Wofford, which is in the same state as my college, which is Winthrop. That's it. That's as close as we came. But I found something. I had to go all the way to the bottom of his profile. I was like, oh, so you're a Wofford grad. I went to Winthrop, graduated in 1996, spent a couple years in Charlotte after. It's like, but people will gravitate to this.
That's great, yeah.
Because this guy is like some dude from California actually went to school in South Carolina. Because people on the East Coast especially think California is a different country. Right? So just providing, it's like, it doesn't matter what the commonality is. It's like, I read on your blog you went to France. I like bread. It doesn't matter. Right? Just find something. So it could be whether you belong to the same LinkedIn group. It could be university. It could be where the person like lives right now. Like the person might live in Dallas, Texas. You can say, oh, by the way, my sister was thinking about moving to Dallas. I heard it's a great city. But believe me, this stuff works. It's just a psychological commonality thing. And then at the very end, I just wrap it up and say, this is something I always do because I think people appreciate it. I tell them many thanks for reading this far.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people may get here. I hope you'll have a few minutes next week to chat. So it's sort of like reminding him the reason that he read this far.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a good, I sort of feel like doing this, making the ask and then reminding him what the ask is at the bottom is really important. Because I know I've done this where people, maybe they'll make an ask, then I get to the bottom, like, oh yeah, I should probably be in touch with that guy. And then I forget. Another technique is to even say, if you, and I didn't do it here, now I'm thinking about it, I should have. I could have said something like, just reply back with 2 or 3 times that might work for you next week. Right? Because it's like, just reply. You're just like, people are like, oh, click reply, check the calendar, open 2 to 3, 3 to 4 next week. I get a lot of responses doing that. So this is just, it's not the only way you can use an email. It's just, these are some good traits that seem to be working for me. So I sent out 19 emails last week. It resulted in, I got 5 meetings, 2 people who said they actually weren't going to the conference but said, please call me. 2 people who said they were going to the conference but their schedule was already booked. So 5, 2, and 2, 9 and 19, almost 50% response rate. So that's pretty good.
How do you rank this compared to the exact same content in a cold email or Facebook?
Oh, good question.
If you put the exact same content and then just mail it to the mailing service in Facebook or a cold email.
So you're thinking about it from a B2C perspective?
Yeah, no B2B. Or
I would not use
guess.
Facebook for B2B.
But how B2C then?
For B2C, what I would do, it's the same idea,
Yeah.
which is, I don't know, I'll use the skiing analogy. Maybe you've got software for skiers. I don't know, you're selling skis. Hey Mary, I came across your came across your Facebook profile and saw that you just took a ski trip to Switzerland. We're designing, could I ask you to click on this link and answer a 3-question survey? Our company has built the fastest, newest skis, software, whatever, and given that you just came from a ski trip, I thought you'd be a good person to ask. Something like that. So you have to give people a reason that you're not a stalker.
Yay!
Well,
They are.
and you also don't want it to feel like spam. I mean, I get spammed all the time on LinkedIn from different people. Like, I should have put this up here, but leading up to the conference, I've got like 6 or 7 conference appointment requests from other vendors. These are like people that I'm actually competing with, but they got a master list of emails and they blast it. They're like, hey, we're a mortgage technology company and our booth is number 643. Click here to set an appointment with one of our salespeople. Like,
That's not gonna work.
sort of tempted just to show up and do a demo of their software so I can see how crappy it is, you know, or at least get some ideas on how to sell it. So taking the time to make it personal, even though you'll get through fewer, but I actually use this template and all I have to do is adjust a few things. Adjust, you know, what they do, where they came from. I might adjust slightly the exact question I'm gonna ask them. You're obviously gonna adjust the commonality. You have to be careful. Do these in short bursts, like 10 or 20 at a time, then take a break. Because I've definitely made a mistake of saying like, I read about your background at Wells Fargo. And it turns out like that was like 3 emails ago and this person was in America. I mean, I've had that happen and I didn't get a reply. Gee, I wonder why. But if you try to do too much, you sort of get burned. But you do need to make it personal. It takes time. But again, the advantage is you don't have to worry, you don't have any customers. So get the first one. Figure out how that first person responded back to you, whether it's at Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn.
Yeah, I have a concern with using, I use a similar setup for my emails when I'm stuff like that, but I'm always very anxious that it's too long. That it's, I really afraid of a wall of text.
Yeah.
So I tend to write it as short as humanly possible, but then that means that I kept out the personality and commonality.
Yeah, I struggle with this as well, and I've experimented with this. LinkedIn themselves actually, when you send an email, it recommends no more than like 150 words or something. I think this is like almost 200 words. I don't know exactly. For me, what I found is more successful is if you have these points, I've got a better conversion rate because otherwise it feels like kind of spam, you know. And the other reason people have also asked me, why do you send emails when you could probably guess their email address? And there's a reason I do emails, even if I think I know their email address. There's actually 2 reasons why I do it.
Because then they quickly find your LinkedIn profile maybe?
That's one. That's actually a good third reason.
You're actually spending money in order to combat that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Serious.
People who get an email and know what an email is, they're like, oh, you only get so many of those a month, and this guy actually spent one to send me a note. He must be serious about talking to me. Right? Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah.
Exactly. And then thirdly, people just get, I mean, we have a customer in Dallas and we do a lot of stuff on site, and I just happen to ask this, she's an assistant vice president, how many emails do you get every day? She gets like 250 emails a day. Like I've seen her like Control-Shift-Delete 7 emails at a time. Like there's no way if I send her this message in her email that it's not gonna have nearly the impact. The other thing it does is it filters. Why does it filter people? We're thinking about early adopters. Why does it filter people?
Because you also, when you have send them an email, go to their LinkedIn account, so you can sort of, well, for lack of a better word, stalk them a bit before you actually send that email. And because you use money on it, you're more sort of inclined to spend some time on it.
Well, it's that, and also this guy, Chris, happened to have 500 plus connections. Like, so in LinkedIn, after you get to 500, it just says 500 plus. So to me, that's a signal. Like, hey, this guy actually goes out and talks to people. Right? He networks, and he's just at some regional bank in South Carolina. They've got 100 branches. They're pretty small relative to Wells Fargo, but yet this guy has 500 connections. Like, that's pretty cool. This guy might be interested. And so he did reply back, and he said, hey Scott, after I saw your message, I looked up your company. It looks pretty interesting. I'd love to hear more. I'm open Sunday and random times, Monday and Tuesday. And he sent this from LinkedIn for iPad, which is also another signal to me. I mean, he's a younger guy anyway. So when you're using, for me, I almost, whenever I send an email, I'll only do it if it looks like somebody has like 300-400 plus connections. Typically I try to reserve it for only people 500 plus, because that means that they're on this pro platform a lot, and the chance that they'll reply back is much higher.
There's one thing with LinkedIn that I've never understood, and that's if you use it on a computer connecting to people, you need the email or I forget the options. But if you use it on a mobile, you can connect with people without any email or connections to them.
No, it depends on how
You
you
mean,
set it
you
up.
mean without the message?
Yeah.
No, it's
I
like
can
some
just
people
ask, just
are-
like on Facebook, I can say, can we be a connection?
Yeah, no, connect.
And then they connect.
Yeah.
But I can't do that on the.
Sure you can.
You
Yeah.
can.
Can you?
Yeah. It's just sometimes it requires an email if you have set that they require.
Occasionally, it will ask for you to send, so that you have their email address, but that's very rare.
But it depends on what privacy settings. the
Yeah,
people
it's on
are connecting with.
But I've very rarely run into that anymore.
The only other thing, I'm not saying you do this, but the only other thing is if you spam trying to connect to too many people that you don't know and they reject it, if you get too many rejections, LinkedIn will then also start making you do that extra step to verify that you're not just spamming connections.
Are you a stalker?
So if you're just trying to race to get to 500 by asking everybody out there to be your friend to get rejected a lot, it'll come back to bite you.
Don't do that.
Now, I think if I don't say it correctly, when you connect to somebody, it says how are you connected to them. It says you've done business together, went to school together.
Right.
If you choose the option, I don't know it, then you.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
This is friend. What's this?
Okay.
So I sat down with Chris on Sunday, and these are my notes. I had my questions, just like Ryan suggested. I had my questions. I didn't have a script, but I had a set of questions I wanted to have answered. They're all related to what I validated. When I sat down with Chris, I said, thanks a lot, first of all, taking the time. If you remember what I was hoping to ask you about was mortgage compliance and mortgage servicing. So I have a couple of questions, and it just sort of like rolled into the conversation. So it's like thinking of it as just every time you have that digital touch into then reality touch, it's sort of like being consistent so that people trust you. And then after the meeting, later that day, I sent him a note in a personal, not just like I want to connect with you LinkedIn. I said, thanks a lot for the time, really appreciate it. Hope you wouldn't mind connecting here on LinkedIn. And then, and he accepted.
I see another key here as to what you're doing and your writing, etc. It's that you're curious about the other person.
Yeah.
So I thought you would be a good person to ask.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you a couple of things.
Yeah.
So the curiosity, it seems natural, and I think it's a positive way of selling. You're not selling, actually, in Swedish terms, you're not selling. You're not pushing the person and setting the foot in the door.
Yeah.
That's what we very often in Sweden think of as selling.
Yeah, it's interesting because people have mentioned this in other places, and in general, they talk about. We've worked with other international companies from Europe. For example, I was talking to someone from the Belgian Chamber of Commerce. They've got their chapter up here in San Francisco. And the perception is like, oh, we need to teach our entrepreneurs to be more aggressive. That's the word she used. I said, what do you mean by aggressive? Because the foot in the door, calling you like, hey, I need 5 minutes, that stuff doesn't work.
No.
It doesn't work. What works is intellectual curiosity. And people, I think, are going to naturally respect the hell out of you for doing what you're doing right now. I mean, if people understood how hard it is, what you're doing, leaving your families, coming here. I mean, it sounds great, like, hey, we're gonna go to Silicon Valley, we're gonna, do all this startup stuff. Like, you're starting a company, you're in a different country, you've left your families. Like, if you just connect with people and let them understand, like, I need to learn from you. If I got an email from any of you and I didn't know you, I'd be like, that's freaking awesome. Yes, I want to talk to that person. Because you never know when I want to
Tomorrow
get
you'll get 20 emails. Tonight you'll get 20 emails.
Yeah, that's fine. Great. And I'll accept 18 of them. But I definitely use that to your advantage. I mean, say, look, I'm here to learn. You look like you'd be a good person to ask. You seem like you'd be an expert. I'm only going to take 20 minutes of your time. Just be very upfront about it. And I think you'll get a great response.
I see you use first name.
Yes.
At what level will you stop doing that? You will not write to the president of the
Always
United States and say, I Barack.
I would say Barack.
You would?
Well, right now I'd say President Obama. Or you'll press.
Mr. President.
Yo, man.
So that's quite okay, even though you're not in the
That's a
same
great
level.
question. Yeah, that's a great question. In fact, especially at where you are in your company, I mean, you guys are CEOs, most of you, or you're co-founders, right? So whether or not you perceive you're on the same level, you are on the same level as the CEO of Wells Fargo, or whatever hospital, or whoever you're selling to. And I think it's completely normal to use first names, unless it's somebody super official, like a president or a senator or somebody like that. I would be careful if you can. In this case, his name was, his LinkedIn profile was Chris Shooter. He didn't use Christopher. If it says Christopher, I use Christopher, unless I can find like maybe a post that he did where he calls himself Chris, then I'll call him Chris. But don't shorten it just assuming if you see Christopher, don't say Chris, say Christopher. But I would definitely not do Mr. Shugart with this guy.
But sometimes when they reply, like if it's Christopher, and then they reply to you and they put Chris,
Then
then
they go
I do
Chris,
Chris.
and then I
Then I
transition into
sort of
Chris.
change my reply.
And is the same East Coast, West Coast, would you say? Just,
Yeah, generally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little less formal out here on the West Coast, but most of the work that I do is with banks, and a lot of them
Yeah.
in New York and
Okay,
Charlotte,
there you go.
DC, and they're pretty stuffy. But the thing is, like, it's important also not to let perception become your reality on approaching people. This is just a guy. He's trying to do his job. He's living in South Carolina. He flew across the country to go to this conference. He left his wife and his kid for a couple days. He's the only person from his bank. I think there's like 3 people from his bank that are there. Like, he actually wants to get something out of this conference too. And for him, he told me, he went to my company and he said, wow, it looks pretty interesting. He wants to go there to learn too. So that's why we talk about early adopters, finding those people, looking for the signals that indicate this is a person that might be a good early adopter, at least give you good information. Because you don't have to get 500 guys like this. I'm just trying to get like one guy and then repeat this with guys like you.
How much time do you use to try to like research them before you actually send the email? And do you store all this research in some sort of formatted way so it's easier to connect with them later as well?
Yeah, so I mean, I have a CRM and I use Evernote. I use both in combination. As far as researching a background, I've just gotten so this is him. This poor guy. You're like, why does this guy keep looking at me?
That's every, but you can turn that off.
Every
right?
lecture.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
nobody can see.
Can you?
If you're premium,
You can turn off so you
So
can
this
see.
is how I look at a profile, right? The first thing I look at is this, whether it's second or third connection. If it's a second level connection, then down here in the bottom right, it'll show you who else you're connected to. And then I evaluate how strong those second level connections are. Because I've got some people that I'm connections with that I'm like, I can't remember why I'm connected to them.
Yeah.
Versus other people, I'm like, oh, I talked to that guy last week. And so if it's somebody that is a really strong connection, I'll actually reference that as a common point. Instead of, we both went to school in South Carolina, I'll say, hey, I saw that you know Steve Jones. Steve Jones and I are actually working together on a project. You're welcome to contact him. He'll tell you I'm a good person.
Sorry that this is turning into a LinkedIn thing.
No, it's fine.
But do you know why sometimes there's a relationship tab there and sometimes not? Is
I
it
don't.
only for those who have LinkedIn profile?
I think relationship is if you're connected.
No, but not all of them do, even if you're connected.
Yeah, it could be one of
You know
those
how you
things.
can log, because I always love how you met,
Yeah,
like quickly
this
and
year.
and sometimes
Yeah,
it doesn't
here.
let you.
I don't know, yeah. I don't know for sure. So if this is somebody I hadn't looked at before, then the first thing I look for is, are we second or third level connection? I'm looking at where he lives, what his title is, education, just to sort of get a sense of him. And like immediately I latched on to Wofford College. I'm like, oh, I can use that for sure. Because I had, at the time, I had nothing else. He was a third level connection. And then I kind of scrolled through his background to see, okay, so He started at a software company. He was there for 6 years. So that's interesting. Like, okay, early adopter warning, bing, bing, bing. He was at a software company for 6 years. And he probably started out of college, because based on how he looks and that sort of thing. So from 2006 to 2012, he was at a software company. Like, okay, this guy understands software. That's good for me. Then I saw he was involved with, he's a board of directors for Mortgage Bankers of the Carolinas. So that's just something he does. He doesn't get paid for it. That's just an industry organization. But he's been active in it since 2011. Bing, 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 another good warning, like good signal that this guy's interested in his business. You know, not only is he going to the conference, he's spending time, his own time, doing these sorts of things. And then he's been in this current role for about 2.5 years. And he's a VP. The titles are different in every industry. VP in banking is pretty significant. You're an executive. I mean, you're not all the way up, but you've made it past the rest of the rank and file. So he'll have some influence on the decision. So those were all signals to me that said, this guy is worth reaching out to. And that took me about 10 minutes.
But coming back into emails, apparently you don't read yours.
Wow.
Why is that?
You're talking about here?
Yeah, you have 150 messages.
They do have 150 messages. Because some of them, like this one, it's showing me unread.
Yes.
But I read through my email. Because I set it up, anytime I get a message on LinkedIn, it actually goes to my Gmail account. So there's a lot of those in there.
Hey Scott, just a quick last question. In terms of like, you know, subject lines when you contact somebody, email or in or whatever cold sort of contacting, have you found what's the best sort of ask in your?
Yeah, so the more specific the better. And in this case, I said, could use your help on servicing and compliance questions. So if you use the things like, I could use your help. I mean, again, based on this guy's background and personality, it seems like, his online personality seems like he would respond to something like this. And so for all of my meetings for this conference, I use this, could use your help on specific topic, as opposed to like, do you want to meet?
Yeah.
You know, that's not going to be effective. Because right now, when all you read is that subject line, he doesn't know what that means. It could mean like, oh, he just wants a quick email response, he wants me to answer a survey, it turns out he was asking for a meeting.
Isn't it also about, in a way, speaking to people's egos? I mean, showing curiosity and that, you know, that he feels like he has something to contribute to.
Absolutely.
Is that also kind of an essential thing about reaching out to people to make them feel important and kind of valuable to you?
So you're asking a question, does that help?
Yeah, to kind of make them feel important and that
Definitely.
their opinion has a value to others.
Yeah. So there was a couple of other executives that were actually engineers that turned into banking. And I referenced that. I'm like, in the opening, I said, I noticed you had a technical background and you're in banking. As a software company, I thought you'd be a really good person to ask. So that sort of thing. But, I mean, again, as a startup, people want to help you. People are good people, right? And secondly, you have such a unique background coming from Norway. You're here. You're testing this product. You need to get feedback. I think people will be kind of flattered if it at least looks like you've done your research. And so once you get doing this, I can send like 10 of these in about an hour. Maybe not 10, maybe like 6 or 7. And I'll do that for 2 hours and crank it out. See what kind of response I get from that batch. And then maybe later that day or in a couple days, do another batch.
So let's say you find a prospect or a lady that you really like to talk to on LinkedIn, and you see that you're connected to them, first or second level. How would you rate? Is there an alternative, like to go to your connection and say, would you introduce me to him, or is emails better?
It depends on how much time I have. A lot of cases, like in this case, the conference started October 19th, and in this case, I sent my note October 15th. If we happen to have a common connection, it probably wouldn't give me enough time to route that and get the response I needed. If it's a longer term sort of customer development conversation I'm having, research I'm doing over the next 2 months, depending on how close I am with that second level connection, there's probably, 20 or 30 people in LinkedIn that I'm like super close friends with. Like they're my friends. that I would trust to help me. They understand what we're trying to do with the company, they want to help me, I would ask for that. Otherwise, I just refer in my note, like, hey, I saw we're both connected to Steve Jones, and I know Steve would vouch for me. So if they're first level connection, I just go back and figure out how we connect it and use that as the common point. And again, I would still put that at the bottom. Say like, if you don't remember, we met at, 3 years ago, we met at the Nordic Innovation House and we chatted. So it just depends on your speed. So for your customer development work, from a lead perspective, maybe if you have more time versus if there's a pending event like this conference where I wanted to set these meetings, I just went straight to email. So another way you can use, just another way I reached out to this guy. So I read this article, again, in my industry, I read the article, I saw who the author was, and I'm like, wow, that was actually a really good article. I wonder who this guy is. And I found him on LinkedIn. It turns out he works for a servicing company. So same thing, same sort of model. I said, I'm at this conference this week, spending a lot of time about this topic. I came across your article published on mortgage work, right? Would you happen to have a few minutes? This is what we do. And then at the bottom, here's that example. I said, I saw we're connected to several of the same people. Tony Moss, Dimitri Notis, Brent Taggart, and others. I'm sure they'll all tell you I'm good people. That's the way I described it. Because I know all three of these people really well, and it's doubtful that this person would even go and ask those. But the fact that I'm willing to make that claim is all really the confidence that you need. And if you're receiving that email. So this guy actually replied back, same thing. Said, it turns out I'm not in the conference, but you're welcome to call me at the office. Here's my number. I'm out Friday. So I'm going to call next week. So that's, instead of using the conference list, I just found a really good article. Because again, that article, the fact that this person is an expert in this field, it's a signal to me that that's the kind of person I want to go target. So go find your industry publications, find those good article authors. If they're not, if they happen to be industry experts, you can go reach out to them. Is this helpful?
Yes.
Yes? Okay, good. A couple other things on LinkedIn. So there's also groups. You guys belong to groups on LinkedIn? Yeah. So again, there's a Mortgage Bankers Association group. This group has 51,000 members. So it's huge. It's a huge group on LinkedIn. So you can search all of the members. You can view, if you're a member of a group, you can view all of the members in that group. And so I found, as an example, this guy, he's a second level connection. If I didn't want to burn an email, you can also, if you belong to the same group as people, you can send them a message. If you're belonging to the same group. So you don't actually have to burn the email. Make sense? So when you click send message, then it pops up right here on the screen that you can send a message to, this guy's name is Kaveh, and you can do a subject, and you can do a message, and then it says send message. So it's just like an email, except it's not actually an email. You can connect to that. You can send that person a message even though we're not connected. So it's just another way to get in touch with people. If maybe you only have, some people don't want to do the premium account, or you're out of emails for the week, for the month. This is another way you just become part of the group. So for you, go find the drones group on LinkedIn. Turns out there is one. Or if you're selling hardware, so I searched routers in LinkedIn groups and say, like, here's the group Cisco certified. So these are 35,000 people that are certified to, I guess, fix routers or something, install routers, Cisco routers. Is anybody here, who's a hardware person? No hardware person?
With routers. You don't need the hardware and the software.
Oh, okay.
But the Cisco certification is just, you go through a lot of courses, not to fix the hardware, but to set them up properly, to manage when they're running.
So these are professionals, and same thing. I just went to this link to this group. There's 60. As it turns out, there's 60,000 members, and it actually tells me immediately group members in your network. So these two people are second level connections. I don't do hardware or anything. I'm just pretending that I did. I found this guy, Charles Jubel. He's a project engineer at Honeywell Automated. Engineer Project 2. So big companies have all these different titles, right? But Honeywell's a really big company. If I'm doing customer development, or I want to at least get a sense for how decisions are made in these big organizations. So same thing, I go to his profile, I could read about his background. Turns out he's in San Francisco, so maybe that's my common point. Same thing, I can send an email. And the other thing on emails, when you're sending it out, I almost always do expertise requests. So there's these options. You can do career opportunity, consultant, new venture, job inquiry, expertise request, business deal reference request. I almost always choose expertise request. Because people are flattered by that. And then at the bottom, it'll tell you how many emails you have and your email feedback score. So when you send an email to somebody, they either choose to accept it or decline it, and then they get to rate whether or not that was a worthy connection. So I've got a 5-star. I've never had a bad email. I've never had anyone give me a bad email rating. And I've sent hundreds of these. I've had people not accept. And when they don't accept, then those credits get returned back to you after a week. So you don't lose those. But I've never had anybody. So if you take, this is why people are on LinkedIn. They want this kind of stuff. So you use it to your advantage. Here's the drones one, by the way.
But how do you see if they're ready or not, like the email?
How do you see what?
If they read the email.
You don't.
But you can withdraw them as well, right?
You can withdraw them.
So after like a couple of weeks, you haven't gotten a reply.
So LinkedIn sets it up for a week. If they don't reply back within a week, then it returns the credit back to you. Yeah. But the message stays in that person's inbox. So I've had people who, like 3 weeks later, have actually responded, and I've gotten the email credit back, so it's like free. So, and then this is what you get. If your email goes unnoticed, then I got this email from LinkedIn that said 4 credits have been returned to my account. So another place that you can use is Meetup. You guys use Meetup? Yeah, same place, same idea, right? Go find, in this case I found one, this is a Meetup group for health technology. So it's got 3,000 members, it's based here in San Francisco. And the great thing about Meetup is there could be health technology meetups in every major city across the United States. Like there's a lean startup meetup group in like 50 different cities across the US. So you can go, once you join that group, then it shows you who you're in common with. And it's the same thing, you can use Meetup just like you use LinkedIn and say, hey, I saw you were part of the health technology meetup group in Dallas, Texas, and I read about your background on LinkedIn. I thought you'd be a great person to ask this question. Boom, right? And the same thing, you're looking for early adopters. People that take the time to actually join a meetup and maybe even go out of their personal time at night to go learn about health technology, probably a pretty good person that you want to go talk to, as opposed to the 25-year veteran that just buries their head in the desk and doesn't even have an online profile. So using LinkedIn and using Meetup, those are just 2 ways that you can go find those early adopters, because that's who you're looking for when you're selling, especially as a startup. Good? So normally I would do an exercise where we'd actually go and find groups, meetup groups, industry conferences, LinkedIn groups, but in the interest of time, we're not going to do that. So the last section that we want to cover, any other questions on LinkedIn? I know it's like throwing a lot of stuff at you. Is this useful, helpful? Yes? Everybody's going to be like LinkedIning later. Yeah? Okay. So, you guys want to keep going or you need a 5-minute break? Let's take 5 minutes. 5 minutes. I'm going to start my timer. So as we're reconvening, I'm just thinking through the rest of the content that I had prepared. I knew we weren't going to get through everything, and that's okay. So a couple things that we already talked to Ann and Elsa about. One is that Robert and I were going to follow up and do what we call office hours. So later on, in a couple of weeks, we'll schedule to come down and be available for a day, and you guys will know. We'll work with y'all on the schedule, and then you can just sign up for any specific questions. Spend 15, 20, 30 minutes with us, so we'd be available there to follow up on those, so we can kind of help make sure that you're absorbing what we're teaching here. The second thing I want to do is actually, and we haven't talked about this, so I hope it's okay, is actually host a webinar, like a webinar to go through some of the slides that we're not going to get through, because I think they're really important. So I can work with you all on schedules, but it'd take like 45 minutes or an hour just to make sure we get through. Because we're going to go, we got like 20 or 30 minutes left. We're going to go fairly quickly through this next section. It's really important that you guys get this material, so I do want to make sure that you get it. So I'll work with you all and we'll just kind of do the webinar as an extension to our time here in person. And then we'll record it in case for some reason you can't make that web time. But ideally, you'd be there to ask questions. So I hope that's okay.
Yeah, that's great.
That's
Thanks
great.
so much.
Perfect.
So the last section we're going to talk about here is what we call stages of the sale. So we're talking about stages of the sale. This is the process by which companies and people make decisions. There's basically four major stages of the sale. So the first is needs analysis. The second is evaluation of options. The third is resolution of concerns, and the fourth is implementation. We're going to go through these in more detail. The reason that I want to teach this to you is that as you start, if you think about what we've covered here, we've done value statements, we've identified buyer types, we've talked about how to go find those buyers. So you're like, okay, I have a conversation. Now what do? How do I know I'm making progress? And so if you have a model in your mind about these stages of the sale, it will help you determine whether or not you are in fact making progress or you're just having a lot of conversations. And maybe having conversations is okay from a lean startup, customer development, customer discovery standpoint. When it gets to the point where you're trying to actually sell something, you're going to have to get to a point where you're doing this implementation. You're going to have to actually get a contract. You're going to have to be rolling out your software. So you might end up spending a lot of time in needs analysis, maybe too much time, thinking like, hey, I'm having a lot of conversations. Or this, you might inch into the second stage where you're having a lot of conversations and doing product demos, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're getting closer to completing a sale. So I think having these four stages in your mind can be really healthy, and then you'll have this as reference material as well. What is the noise? So again, an exercise that is useful to do, you can do this in your own time and bring it with you to office hours. Robert and I call this the 7-1. So if you think about time in 7 increments. So there's a minute, hour, day, week, month, quarter, and year. So if you think about what if you had a customer today that called you up, all of a sudden your phone rang, you ran outside, took a call, and somebody said, "We want to buy your product." What would you do? How would you actually implement your solution? What would you do? What would be the very first thing after you got off the phone, or even while you're on the phone? What would you need to do to actually begin implementing your solution? And after you did that first one thing, what would you do an hour from now? And what would you have to do by tomorrow? And what would have to happen by next week? And by next month? And in 3 months? And by next year? In order for your customer to be successful. So if you think about, if you can think about from the end backwards, and consider all the things, making sure that you actually have a plan of action and share that with the customer early on in the sales conversation that says, hey, when we sign up our customers, this is our plan. This is the first thing we do, first day, this is what we do after 1 week. By the first month, you're up and running and we have 25 users trained. By the next quarter, we go back and we do some on-site training. And then a year from now, you should have not just 25 users, but 100 users. What that does is it gives your prospects a really clear picture, visualizing how your software or your product is going to work and how they're going to be successful with it, but also shows that you're being really professional. It's not just about getting to the sale and like feeling, I think one of the biggest disservices that as salespeople we talk about closing the sale. Have you guys heard that term, closing the sale? I think that's terrible. Because the sale is actually the start of the relationship. You're like, closing the sale means like, we're done. I got your money, forget about you. Like, even if it takes a year to get a customer, you're hoping that person stays a customer for 20 years. So what's a year's worth of investment? Very little relative to how long you want that relationship to last. So this idea of thinking from the end backwards in terms of what would need to happen, I think would be really healthy for you from a business strategy standpoint. So as we dive into the individual stages of the sale, the first stage is called needs analysis. And this is where we have to really pay attention to a lot of what Ryan talked about in terms of customer discovery. Because oftentimes this is how we view the world. Right? Or in Robert's case, it's like this. It's like Thanks. Sorry. Appreciate it. I should be careful. He's much larger.
You can have a nice ride back.
Yeah, exactly. He can take the train. It's okay. So of course it's easy, like, oh, we have this product, this is what it does, this is how I view the world, right? Instead, when we're talking about needs analysis, it's really part and parcel of that customer discovery. It's really understanding what the customer's problem is, right? It's almost irrelevant what your product is, because your product may solve a problem that is really small or doesn't really exist. It's a problem that you perceive, perhaps in your own world, but nobody else perceives that to be a problem. So the needs analysis, when you're doing this, is the idea of going through and asking the questions to make sure. One of the most critical things when you're testing your hypothesis is making sure that the customer states the problem that they have. Right? So we talk about in legal terms, don't lead the witness. So as an attorney, you're not allowed in a court setting to get the answer that you want. The answer has to come independently. It has to come from the witness. It's the same thing from the customer perspective. When you're asking questions, you need them to state the problem such that you're validating the problem. And you have to focus on what the customer is communicating, not just what they're saying. And I'll get to that in a second. The difference between what they're communicating and what they're actually saying. Did you have a question? That's where you're going for a second.
Yeah, like how does it translate to B2C sales?
So in B2C, it's a lot of testing in terms of thinking about what the message is on a banner ad, for example, or whether it's an email campaign, or using those outbounds, like if you're going to go talk to 20 people on Facebook, testing different things to see if what you've identified is in fact the same problem, that what you perceive as a problem. Like maybe you think like, oh my God, like how can anybody in the world walk around without a drone following them? Like that's insanity. Everybody needs a drone, right? But if you're not going out and testing that, I think it's really cool, by the way. But if you're not going out and validating that with people and determining that the needs that you think it fills are in fact do exist, then the rest is, all you have is a hobby.
But you use like, for example, if you're doing a Facebook ad or Google ads or something, how do you sort of do a small test batch before and see what gives the best click rates, or?
Yeah, I mean that's, again, it's the best part about being a startup. And one of the best things about Facebook is how inexpensive it is to test. I mean, having a banner ad with a certain message, a certain value proposition, a certain value statement, and then having that go back to a landing page, and being able to test multiple versions of your landing pages, multiple versions of your value statement, and multiple different types of people you want to target on Facebook, young men versus older women, all of those kinds of things. That sounds like a strong kind of thing to say. But that's the advantage of B2C, is that you can rapidly iterate. Those of us in B2B, that iteration sometimes takes months, because trying to get conversations with guys like Chris can take a few weeks, and then we have another conversation, and then another, and it could be January before I am able to validate or invalidate a hypothesis. But you can do it in a day.
Yeah, and just a little tip there. I come from Shopee, a platform that makes bloggers and social media users make money online on their platform. And we actually use, I have an online marketing background. So we actually use Google AdWords as our customer discovery almost, because we do a lot of split testing between the messages.
Yep.
So we can actually sort of semi-prove what the biggest problem is based on our ads. And we see we have the highest volume searching on, let's say, how to make money on my blog. You know, that's a bigger problem than the other search phrases uses, or phrases. You know, we see we have higher conversion rates on people writing how to make money on Twitter. There are fewer searching for that problem, but the conversion rate is higher. So the ones who search that way convert very well on our platform. So if you know, or if you are willing to learn, Google AdWords and the display network in Google is a fantastic custom discovery tool. We can split test 3 different messages parallel to see what works best in our ads.
And you could also use, I did this with, so in the United States, Fannie Mae is a really big housing market investor, you might have heard of them. We had this big presentation we were planning. So a week before the presentation, I ran a Facebook ad, and I used the Facebook ad, you can keep drilling down, to the point where I targeted people who stated that their employer was Fannie Mae and they lived in the Washington, D.C. area. And there was like 200 of those people that happened to be on Facebook. So I ran a banner ad for our product. So anytime any of those people logged into Facebook, they saw an ad for our company. Now nobody clicked on it, which is okay, because I learned something from it, which one, I could actually do that if I really wanted to. But two, I could, even on an enterprise basis, I could come up with some kind of custom message almost for every single person. I've had a friend of mine, he actually ran a Facebook ad just for one friend, just to mess with him. It was like a personal message to this guy. He kept drilling down, he figured out a way to box in that guy's profile, like where he worked, where he lived, income, age, all that stuff. And then finally when Facebook got down to like target audience 1, he's like, that's him. And he ran a Facebook ad just to mess with him. But that's what you can do. I mean, you can do that now. Whether it's a consumer or even an enterprise, you can do that stuff. And you can do the same thing in LinkedIn. I mean, I've done ads on LinkedIn for workshops and books and things that we've done. And it's the same thing, you can target it in, like I'm gonna do these 200 people, basically, like if you live in San Francisco and your job is CEO and your company is under 5 people and you're in software and you're in this part of software, you're like, great, I'm only gonna pay for this ad for 200 people to see it and see if I get any clicks. So it's not the way you want to drive your sales in enterprise, but it could be an interesting way to sort of collect leads and experiment with your different value propositions. So this last section, this last bullet talks about focusing on what the customer is communicating, not what they're saying. So it's important to understand the difference between what the customer says and what their actual needs are. So there's what they're telling you, the stated need, and what the actual need is. So as an example, a stated need, if I'm selling, say I'm selling web presentation software, like WebEx. Anybody use WebEx? Or GoToMeeting or any of those? So I might talk to a VP of sales who says, oh yeah, we're looking for new web meeting software. But the more I talk to that person, the more questions that I ask. The actual need would be, well, our sales team is entirely phone-based. Right? So we do all of our sales on the phone. And it turns out we're seeing a large drop-off in our sales pipeline after we do a demo over the phone. So we're using WebEx or GoToMeeting, and our sales reps are doing these demos, product demos over the phone, but then after we do the product demos, our pipeline kind of goes from this down to like this. We're not getting a lot of good conversions. Does this person really need new web meeting software? Probably not, but they need a sales training. Right? Or they need a better product. They don't need, like, new web meeting software is not going to solve this need, this problem. It doesn't matter if somebody's using WebEx or GoToMeeting. I'm sure the difference in how many people actually come through after a product demo is going to be pretty minimal. And if there's a change, it's probably going to be random or lucky. Right? So the core need, the actual need is, like, their salespeople are actually probably not very good at demoing the software over the phone. So maybe they need to think about doing on-site demos. Maybe they need to think about ways to shorten the demo. Maybe they need to do a better job of explaining the product over the phone to somebody who's not there with them. Maybe they just need better sales training. Who knows? But the actual need is much different than somebody's like, oh, we just need new web meeting software. So it's sort of like understanding that from a needs analysis standpoint is really important. So just because somebody gives you the answer to a question, it's okay to ask them a follow-up, like why? Why do you think that? It's sort of the 5 whys analysis. Like you said you need new web meeting software, why is that? Well, because we don't get very many conversions after demos. Okay, that? Why is that? Why is that? So that's gonna help you get to the root cause that ultimately your product might be able to solve. So in this first stage, I mean, you're doing a lot of questioning. You're looking for signals. You're looking for things like, is the prospect actively looking for a solution? And again, this goes to the difference between maybe an early adopter or somebody who might be the cat in the pool. Somebody that's like I have a problem and I need to solve it, or I'm interested in solving this problem. Versus somebody's like, oh yeah, you know, we've been using IBM for years and it's not great, but it could be better. But sure, if you want to show me a demo, I'd be happy to look at it. Like, do you really want to spend your time with that person? Or do you want to spend time with the person that says, oh my God, I can't believe you have drones. I have been looking for drones that are going to follow me around for the last 3 years, and I cannot believe that nobody else has this product. I can't wait to see it. Like, which is better, right? Obviously. So you need to find those people that are actively looking for a solution. You want to find out things like how long the problem has been around. And you want to find out pretty quickly, if you can, the person that you're talking with, who might be a detractor, who might be somebody who would be against that decision. And that's part of understanding who those different buyers are. So you could be talking to a user buyer or a product champion. You want to ask that person, kind of like, who else is involved with the decision? Is there any kind of reason that you may not be interested in buying the software? And they might tell you, like, well, we never have any budget to solve this problem. It's a big problem, but we never have any budget. Or it's a big problem, but our technology team never wants to approve new software because they're worried about, you know, anything that's cloud-based. You have to sort of find those things out early in the process. So your needs analysis is just when you're collecting as much information as you can. That's why I say it's very, very similar to customer discovery. Just asking as many questions as you can. And you want to try to do your customer discovery with different buyer types if you can. If you can only get one person in a company, it's okay to start there. But ideally, you do that with 2 or 3 or 4. A couple of mistakes to avoid. So, have you guys ever heard this English saying, what assume spells?
Yes.
Yeah. So, it's the same idea as like, don't assume that because you've heard this problem being stated by one person, that it's like, oh, we found the market. Let's go solve this problem for everyone. And that goes into the lean startup aspect of really understanding, getting to a minimal viable product because you've identified a problem that exists all across the industry. You never want to insult people. It's easy to do. I've seen people do it. Like, yeah, you know, if you used our software, you can get rid of that old database platform that you guys built.
And there's the builder.
I built it, right? Or we run into this, so there's entire applications engineering teams at these banks. There's like 100-person teams. Their job is to build software for the bank, and our job is to get rid of those people, basically, is to replace them. So you need to just make sure you understand that you focus on the needs of the customer and not jumping to how proud you are of your product. And then the third thing to avoid is interviewing only one kind of buyer. Because just because you get good traction with the user buyer doesn't mean the economic buyer is going to sign on, or just because the technical buyer thinks your software is great that the user buyers want to use it. So you want to make sure you're keeping those user buyers, using those value statements to make sure you're working through the organization as you're working through this first stage. The second stage is evaluation of options. What is that?
Graveyard?
It's a graveyard. Why would I have a graveyard here?
You've given up.
Given up?
All the parts you tried and
There's a lot of ways to spend eternity. You know, I could spend it as some ashes. I could spend it in a mausoleum. You know,
Because the second stage, the evaluation of options, is what I call it's where sales opportunities go to die. A lot of times. So you might identify a need, and then you're sort of like rushing into the next part of the sale. And unless you've maintained some consistency and you really understand the business need, somebody will say like, oh yeah, we have that problem, let me see a demo. Or can I get a free trial? And you're very quickly getting to that stage, but you haven't maintained the momentum, you haven't maintained control of the sale. So as part of the second stage evaluation of options means that now that you've established the need, the person has said, oh, yes, we have that need. You have a product that can solve that need? Wow, that's really great. Let's go and see, truly evaluate if your product can solve our problem. So that's why it's called evaluation of options. The most important thing here that I would stress, how many of you have done demos of your product? You have, great. How long typically do your demos last?
For as long as the guy actually involved it, if he can involve it, and run around.
Oh, because you're outside running around, okay. Those of you that are doing enterprise stuff, how long do your demos take?
2 minutes.
How many?
2 minutes.
Great. How many, who else?
30 minutes, maybe.
30 minutes? 60 minutes? Somebody say 60? 15. The shorter the better. The shorter the better at this stage. So there's what's called a business demo, which is you've assessed the needs and you're only going to show that part of your software or your product that matches those needs and nothing else. And as quickly as you can, shut off the computer and get back into a conversation. Right? Because later, in the later stages, when you do what's called the technical demo, that's when you do the click by click. That's when you have the whole audience to make sure that that your product does everything from a risk and functionality standpoint that you say it should. So when you think about the product demo, I like this picture, and it's a good visual. One of the things you can try to do, think about how far you can take the sale without ever showing your product. Think about that. If you can articulate and do needs analysis, articulate a value statement in a way with all the different buyers, get all these different buyers in a company really interested in the fact that you say you can solve this problem without even showing your product, now you're sort of like building this anticipation. And then when you do the business demo, that first demo, it's really short. People are like, oh my God, that's exactly what you said it would be. And then you call your computer. You say, great, what has to happen next in order to continue this conversation? So it's sort of a trick to play, and it could be elusive because we're really proud of our product and we know it does all these things. The shorter you can keep it and the longer you can prevent from actually showing your product, oftentimes the better you can go. So, and for some of you it's okay because you don't have much of a product right now. So that's what you're doing. You're like waving your hands a lot of times. You're like, oh yeah, we would show you that, but we're just working on that code right now. Meaning you haven't even built it yet. Right? We've all been there. So,
but I think this is a really important point, because this is where it's really difficult because you're so in love with what you've created that you want to show off all the parts of your beautiful baby, right?
Right.
And so that's where you really have to make an effort to hold back off.
Yeah.
That's my experience.
Totally agree. I mean, I've got a 2.5-year-old. I was talking to Anne a little bit earlier. All she has to do is say the word kid, and I'm just going to start talking about my kid. You know, I'm surprised I didn't even show you pictures.
Yeah.
You know, when I'm telling her all about my kid, she's probably like, enough about this kid. But it's the same way. If you know, the longer you can keep from showing your baby, the more effective it is. Because every conversation you have, you're going to unearth more information. More information means you can position your solution specifically to those needs.
So, is this specific for, how should I say, B2B sales, or how would this translate into selling to investor, like an investor pitch? Because I've heard the opposite, that you should, as quick as you can, tell them what to do. If you can show your product, show the product. Because then everything follows. You know, you don't get so much questions saying, we just talk about it, show and screenshots or demo.
It's a really good question that I'm not qualified to answer, because I don't know how to do investor pitches.
Maybe this, if I understand you correctly, this is to keep their interest and to keep them talking about their own problem instead of you talking about their own.
Yeah, I mean, and I've had situations where, like, I'll talk to a product champion and they go, hey, I'm going to set up a conference call. And I actually canceled a demo a couple weeks ago with a group. They didn't know I canceled it because we still have the call. So she said, I'm going to set up this call. There's going to be these 4 people on the call, and I want you to do a product demo. And these 4 different people were from 4 different business divisions. For me to do a product demo for all 4 of those people and keep them all interested and show them all something that's useful and valuable would have been literally impossible for me to do in 30 minutes. So we got them on the phone it was before we did the call. I said, look, I'm not sure if we're going to show a demo. Maybe we'll just show you a couple of short things. I think it's important to focus on the conversation first. And we spent 30 minutes talking about what the individual needs were and how they all actually were related to each other. And I said, oh, okay, I learned so much more. And I said, great, here's what I think we should do. I'm gonna set up an individual call with each of the 4 of you, and I'll do a demo for our part of the platform that's related to you, so that you don't have to sit there wasting all this time looking at, you know, other people's part of the demo. So what that does is it maintains control. You keep control of the sale. So this is a good question to think about as you're progressing through the sales process. This is life, right? This is the way it works. So think about every interaction, who's in control of the next step? Whether somebody says, hey, send me a proposal, or they go, great demo, we'll let you know. Right? You're like, great, I just bled my heart out to you, showed you all the great stuff that we're doing, and now I have to wait for you to call me back. There's something wrong here. I've invested all of this time and all this energy, and now I've given control of the sale back to you. That's not right. Like, you're solving their problems. So always think about who's in control of the next step. And never underestimate the power of inertia, right? Meaning people will just always, if you give them a reason to do things, they'll keep doing it, right? But if you leave it to them, they'll stop because they're lazy cows. That's the way it works.
I have a Swedish and a Finnish medical device consultancy, so 2 different companies that keep calling me, and because they want me to give them lots of money to develop a pound product. I don't have any money, but they're both keeping me warm, calling me like every 4 or 5 months, and like trying to understand my problems, and then I always have some problems they can give some advice on, or they can give me some numbers, and both keeping me warm, and I'm getting advice from them, and I'm building a relationship, and it's, even though we're not ready to pay yet, it's fascinating, so I think it's
Yeah, I mean, a good venture capitalist does the same thing. Like, you might be too early for them, but they'll meet with you and they'll give you some advice. Or a good investment banker does the same thing. I met an investment banker at this conference, and he said basically, it's common that he'll meet a company, and then it'll be 3 to 4 years before he actually does a transaction for them, whether they're raising capital or doing mergers and acquisitions. He's like, my job is to just keep people warm, right? He's adding value. Think about that on the opposite side. When you're selling your product, you just want to make sure that whatever the next step is, you're in control. You're in control of that next step.
So if they say like, great, we'll come back to you, how do you turn it around?
If they say, great, we'll come back to you, then I usually say, I'll ask them, like, when you say you'll come back to us, what does that mean? And they say, well, we have to talk amongst ourselves and figure out if this is the right fit. And then I say, great, so what's the criteria for you to decide what the right fit is? And they'll tell you, and they go, they're always uncovering new information. So that gives you an opportunity to go, oh, I'm really glad you mentioned that was part of the criteria. We didn't cover that in the demo. Let me set up a call with you so that we can go through that and have our software solve that. So I usually just turn around and ask them, like, what do you mean by that? If you play dumb, people have to answer. I mean, it's just like, well, what does that mean? I'm from Norway, and the sales process here is totally different in the United States. Can you help me understand how you make decisions?
That's a great answer.
My first sales job, my manager told me every person you talk to for the first year and a half, tell them you're new. Tell them you're brand new. Because they're like completely disarmed when you're a new salesperson. You're like, yeah, I don't even know really how this market works. Can you explain to me how your company makes decisions on these kinds of products? And they tell you everything. It was awesome. It was the best advice I ever got. So I would totally be like, hey, we're from Norway, we're only here for a few weeks. I'd really like to understand your decision process. Is there a way for us to get to some kind of decision within the next 2 months? Because that's when I have to go back.
That's what we used to say to get information. Say, hi, we're students.
Yeah.
People say anything.
Student thing, yeah. Everything is great. So, let me just cover a couple more things, and then I know we're going to move along. So one thing to keep in mind is the difference between, this is related to keeping control, the difference between continuation and an advance. What do you think that means? The difference between a continuation and an advance in the sale.
Using continuation to sort of extending the contract, and advance is sort of, well, fractured.
You're not far off. Not exactly what I was looking for, but you're not far off. If you're in a sales conversation with somebody and they say to you, call me back in 2 weeks, and you call them back in 2 weeks and they say, you know what, I haven't had a chance to get back to you or get to this, call me back in 2 weeks. Is that a continuation or an advance? Continuation. You're not dead, you're just not moving, you're not growing. An advance is, call me back in 2 weeks and I'll have an answer for you. And you call them back in 2 weeks and they say, I talked to Bill in IT like I said I would, and he said that this would potentially be a solution we'd consider. So how about you come back and do a demo with the entire IT team? That's an advance. So just understanding the difference between like, hey, call me back, or oh, I didn't get to it, or yeah, send me stuff. That's all, people aren't telling you no, but you're not making progress. So keep that in mind as you're moving through the stages between going from understanding the needs to getting them to evaluate options. And as they're evaluating those options, make sure you understand the difference between them just kind of putting you on simmer versus actually turning up the heat and getting to a boil. So that's the difference between continuation and advance. And this, as a startup, same thing. If you're dealing with a company that says, I need a proposal from you, you're dealing with the wrong person. If somebody says, send me a proposal, you're dealing with the wrong person. Because you're looking for early adopters, early innovators, people that are able to make a decision, people that are willing to implement and able to implement your solution really, really quickly. If somebody needs a proposal, what they're telling you is, I have absolutely no authority whatsoever to make this decision, and I'm going to go to my company authority figurehead people and show them what a great idea I came up with. And they're going to try to pitch your idea. So if they say, send me a proposal, say, you know what, I really don't think we know enough information about how your company makes decisions. Can you help me maybe craft the proposal together? Or when can I come in and do a presentation for all of your managers so to make sure that you and I are talking the same languages? So basically, I would just refuse to do proposals right now at your stage. So the third step is resolution of concern. So you've understood the needs. They've evaluated the option of using your specific solution. And now they've got questions, they've got concerns. So a lot of times this is the case, and you'll run into this, particularly with business sales. If you get along really, really well with somebody, you're like, oh man, this guy, he's like got this big need, he's an early adopter, he can't wait to use our software, they've evaluated, we did the demo went great, and then the next time you talk to him, he's got like 17 questions for you. And he feels like, it's like, oh, well your software doesn't do this, how do you handle it? Your software doesn't do that, how do you handle it? Your software doesn't seem secure, how do you handle this? How much is it? All of a sudden this person you thought was your friend becomes like a relentless enemy asking you all of these questions. So just think of this as, it's actually a very positive sign if people are asking you questions, because it means they're visualizing what they're going to have to go through to get approval, and they're understanding what exactly the open questions are going to be. So I think of objections as just questions. People are putting up a stop sign, it means they just need to understand more. And this is typically when you're going to do more of a technical demo. You're going to get all the different buyers in the room or online, and you're going to do a much more elongated demonstration. And then the last step, I want to go through and we'll stop, is implementation. So we talked about this in the beginning part of this section, which is when the customer wants to implement your product, what are all the things that need to happen? So once you've gotten through the resolution of concerns, you've answered all those questions, answered all those obstacles and objections, then understanding exactly what the relationship is going to look like from the moment that they say go forward. So these are the 4 stages. So it's needs analysis, resolution of concerns, or needs analysis, evaluation of options, resolution of concerns, and then finally implementation. So you all are pretty early right now, so you could probably still be working in needs analysis and evaluation of options for a while. But as things start maybe heating up, you can make some progress over the next few weeks or months, and then we can definitely work with you more.